On January 7th this year, a 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck Tingri City in Shigatse, Tibet, resulting in at least 126 deaths. After the earthquake, a reporter from CCTV visited the scene. She discovered cracks in the dam of the Cuoguo Reservoir in Tingri County. Next to me is a long and deep crack on the dam. From the Water Resources Department, who conducted observations here today, told me that the crack measures 560 meters in length. My shoe size is 37, and the width of the crack is roughly the length of two of my shoes. Firefighters on site measured the crack and found it to be 50 centimeters wide. If the dam were to collapse, the water would flow out rapidly, flooding the road first and then nearby villages. To prevent this, firefighters and water resource workers are closely monitoring the dam for signs of danger. If any issues arise, the relevant departments will respond quickly. On January 18th, around midnight Beijing time, Tingri County experienced a 4.8 magnitude earthquake at a depth of 10 kilometers. Less than an hour later, at 12:26 a.m. on January 19th, a 4.2 magnitude earthquake occurred in the same area, also at a depth of 10 kilometers. The China Earthquake Network Center confirmed that the magnitude earthquake was an aftershock of the earlier 6.8 magnitude earthquake. The epicenter of this aftershock was 20 kilometers from the main Quakes epicenter, 163 kilometers from Shigatse City, and 374 kilometers from Lhasa. Less than an hour later, another aftershock of 4.2 magnitude struck Tingri County. Following these aftershocks, several reservoirs in the area showed signs of damage, including cracks. At a press conference about the 6.8 magnitude earthquake, officials reported that out of 14 reservoirs inspected by the Water Resources Department, 5 showed localized cracks or similar issues. 3 of these reservoirs have been emptied as a precaution. At Cuoguo Reservoir in Tingri County, 60 high-density geophysical monitors have been installed to track dam conditions in real time, and drainage channels have been excavated. At Ra'ang Reservoir in Changzuo Township, where issues like tilting of the right outflow wall and seepage near drainage channels were identified, measures such as increasing downstream water flow have been implemented to lower the risk of dam failure. Around 1,500 residents from 6 villages downstream have been relocated to 9 safety shelters in higher areas away from riverbanks. Hydrology expert Wang Weiluo, who is based in Germany, mentioned in a media interview that the Chinese Communist Party has tightly controlled information about the earthquake's impact and disaster response. The official acknowledgement of 5 reservoirs with localized cracks, along with measures to empty their water, indicates the severity of the situation. Emptying reservoirs is often the last resort to prevent catastrophic dam failures. Before the earthquake revealed these issues, the CCP's plan to build the world's largest dam downstream of the Yarlung-Sampo River had already drawn international concern due to the seismic risks in the region. The project began in March 2021 after approval by the National People's Congress. However, Beijing provided little information about it until late 2024. On December 25, 2024, a news agency reported that Beijing was preparing to move forward with constructing the dam. Once completed, it is expected to generate 300 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity annually, more than triple the output of the Three Gorges Dam. This has raised concerns in India. On January 3rd, a spokesperson for the Indian Ministry of External Affairs stated, "The Chinese side has been urged to ensure that the interests of downstream states of the Brahmaputra River are not harmed by activities in upstream areas. We will continue to monitor and take necessary measures to protect our interests." Brahma Chalani, an Indian geopolitical and strategic expert, wrote in the Nikkei Asia that the massive dam is located in the seismically active southeastern Tibetan Plateau. This region sits along the fault zone where the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates collide, making it highly susceptible to reservoir-induced earthquakes. Former senior engineer with the Sichuan Provincial Geological Survey, Fan Xiao, emphasized in an article published in October 2022 that the hydropower project in the Yarlung-Sampo Grand Canyon is situated in a high-risk seismic zone. Strong earthquakes could cause direct damage. Developing hydropower and constructing massive infrastructure in such areas entails unprecedented costs and risks. Concerns raised by experts are not unfounded. Accidents due to dam construction have occurred before. The largest known reservoir-induced earthquake was the 1967 Quoguo Dam earthquake in Maharashtra, India, which had a magnitude of 6.5. While this earthquake was confirmed to be caused by reservoir storage, there has yet to be a confirmed case of an earthquake leading to a dam collapse. The 2008 earthquake in Sichuan, which killed 87,000 people, also brought international attention to the phenomenon of reservoir-induced earthquakes. Many scientists link the earthquake to the construction and operation of the Zipingpu Dam near the fault zone. The argument is that building reservoirs increases pressure on rock formations in the area, and water infiltration along fault lines can disrupt the stress balance deep underground. So, could reservoirs located on seismic fault zones trigger major earthquakes? Take the Zipingpu Reservoir as an example. This is the largest reservoir among the Cascade power stations in the Upper Min River. Its dam stands 156 meters tall, with a total capacity of about 1.12 billion cubic meters. When the reservoir is at its normal water storage level, its tailwater is only 5.5 kilometers away from the epicenter of the Wenchuan earthquake. Additionally, the geological structure of the area where the Zipingpu Reservoir is located is extremely complex. The reservoir dam is approximately 2 kilometers from the boundary of the Longmenshan fault zone, and the surrounding area contains a dense cluster of faults. The rocks in the reservoir area inherently possess poor engineering geological properties, and they have become further fragmented under the influence of fault activity. Reservoir-induced seismicity is determined by 7 qualitative criteria. 1. The dam height exceeds 100 meters, and the reservoir capacity is greater than 1 billion cubic meters. 2. The dam and reservoir area has active fault lines. 3. The area is a central fault zone, with noticeable uplift or subsidence activities at basin edges or quiet zones. 4. There is a significant gravitational gradient anomaly in deeper layers. 5. The deeper strata exhibit developed tension systems and high permeability. 6. The area has a history of earthquakes. 7. The reservoir area has hot springs. The more criteria a reservoir meets, the greater its potential to induce seismic activity after filling. Alarmingly, the Zipingpu Reservoir meets 6 of these 7 criteria. Did the Zipingpu Reservoir induce earthquakes after it began operations? The reservoir began filling on December 1, 2004, with water levels fluctuating between 817 and 877 meters, a variation of 60 meters. This rise and fall in water levels caused repeated pressure and unloading on the reservoir bed, likely increasing the potential for triggering seismic activity. Before the Wenchuan earthquake, monitoring data from the reservoir area recorded 755 earthquakes ranging from magnitude 0.9 to 3.6 between August 2004 and September 2005. Thus, the possibility that the Zipingpu Reservoir contributed to triggering the May 12 Wenchuan earthquake cannot be ruled out. This shows that reservoir-induced seismic activity is a real phenomenon, especially for reservoirs located on active fault lines. The risk of earthquakes increases when reservoirs are constructed in seismically active zones. It's worth noting that many reservoirs in western China are far larger than the Zipingpu Reservoir and are also situated on active fault zones. Tibetans are no strangers to dams. Dozens have already been built in the region. No one understands the risks of reservoir construction better than they do. According to a January 10th report by Reuters, researchers have noted that 68 major dams are currently operational in the Himalayan region. These projects have only tapped into 1/5 of the region's immense hydropower potential, derived from its high-altitude lakes. However, this area lies on a seismic belt and faces significant earthquake risks. Additionally, 101 more dams are either in the planning or construction stages. China's frequent construction of large reservoirs often provokes local anger, as residents feel that the government is exploiting the region while endangering their living environment. The Economist reported that the construction of the Three Gorges Dam displaced over 1.3 million people. A similar approach is expected for the Yarlung-Sampo Dam project, though the number of people who will be displaced by this new dam in Tibet's Middle County remains unclear. Critics argue that these dam projects divert resources away from human capital investment. Beijing channels funds into infrastructure rather than education, healthcare, or other social services. This industrial-focused growth model has run into difficulties and has fueled public dissatisfaction with the Communist Party. As hydrology expert Wang Weiluo has pointed out, most water projects in Tibet are aimed at irrigation. These projects aim to transform Tibetan lifestyles, encouraging them to settle and adopt agricultural practices similar to those of the Chinese Han majority, rather than relying primarily on traditional nomadic livelihoods. However, nomadism is well adapted to the local environment and helps preserve the ecosystem. Moreover, Tibet's high seismic activity and frequent earthquakes pose additional risks. Wang noted that the high death toll in the recent earthquake was largely due to the poor quality of housing. If Tibetans had remained nomadic and relied on tents, such structures are less likely to cause fatalities in earthquakes. Even if tents collapse, they wouldn't pose the same threats as poorly constructed buildings. In February 2024, authorities arrested hundreds of Tibetans protesting against the construction of another dam. Protests of this nature are rare in Tibet, a region under tight control since its annexation by China in the 1950s. This unrest highlights the controversial nature of Beijing's dam-building initiatives in the sensitive region. The contested dam is part of Beijing's plan to build another hydropower project along the Jingsha River in Tibet. Known as the Guangtuo Dam, it is being constructed in a valley between Dege and Jiangda counties. Once completed, the dam's reservoir will inundate areas of significant cultural and religious importance to Tibetans, including several villages and ancient monasteries housing sacred relics. Among these is Wangdui Monastery, a 700-year-old site known for its rare Buddhist murals, which hold immense historic value. The Guangtuo Dam will also force the relocation of thousands of Tibetans. The BBC obtained a document resembling a public tender notice indicating that 4,287 residents would need to be relocated for the dam's construction. When contacted, officials listed in the document and the state-owned China Huadian Corporation, reportedly responsible for the project, did not respond. A July 2024 letter from the United Nations Human Rights Council to the Chinese government raised concerns about the dam's irreversible impacts on thousands of people and the environment. According to the letter, the construction plan was initially approved in 2012. From the beginning, local residents were unable to participate in meaningful discussions about the dam project. For example, they were given insufficient information, and authorities failed to provide Tibetan language translations. A letter from the UN highlighted that the government had promised to proceed with the project only if 80% of residents agreed, but there's no evidence that such consent was ever obtained. According to two Tibetans who spoke to the BBC, officials informed residents in February that they would soon be evicted. However, no specific details about resettlement options or compensation were provided, leaving residents deeply anxious. Despite knowing the risks of a crackdown, this profound unease pushed villagers and monks to organize protests. In one of the largest demonstrations, hundreds of Tibetans gathered outside a government building in Dege County. In a verified video obtained by the BBC, protesters can be heard calling on authorities to stop the evictions and allow them to stay. Another verified video shows an incident in Shigatse County, where residents pleaded with visiting officials to cancel the dam project. In the footage, monks in red robes and villagers are seen kneeling on a dusty road, raising their thumbs in a traditional Tibetan gesture of pleading for forgiveness. Historically, China has swiftly cracked down on acts of defiance, particularly where the government is highly sensitive to anything that could spark separatist sentiments. This protest was no exception. Sources told the BBC that authorities responded with a swift crackdown, arresting hundreds of protesters and conducting raids on homes throughout the valley. One widely circulated but unverified video shows Chinese police pushing down on a group of monks on a road, apparently during an arrest operation. Many detainees were held for weeks, with some subjected to severe beatings. Family members and friends of the detained Tibetans were reportedly among the primary targets of these crackdowns. Similar accounts of detentions and beatings were also reported by Tibetan media outlets overseas. Beijing, however, has consistently claimed that such relocations are voluntary and that displaced Tibetans are provided with housing, compensation, and new job opportunities. Officials have portrayed these efforts as improvements to Tibetan living conditions. Rights groups paint a very different picture. Their reports indicate evidence of forced relocations, inadequate compensation, overcrowded housing, and a lack of job opportunities. They also highlighted that forced resettlements severed centuries-old ties between rural Tibetans and their land. Maya Wang, acting director for China at Human Rights Watch, stated that the displaced people effectively lose everything they have, including their livelihoods and their communities. Now, the planned dam project in Tingri County, which threatens to submerge surrounding areas, is facing similar concerns. Once operational, the rights of residents along the riverbank will be severely impacted. Additionally, the Wall Street Journal noted that the Yarlung-Tsangpo River flows from Tibet into India and Bangladesh, serving as a critical water source for both countries. The construction of a massive dam on this river could threaten the ecological balance in China and its southern neighbors. For example, Tibet's hydropower dam projects could give the Chinese Communist Party control over the timing and volume of water flowing from the river into South Asia. This could significantly impact agriculture and freshwater supplies in India and Bangladesh. A prime example is the CCP's construction of dams on the Mekong River, which has already disrupted the environment, harmed the downstream fishermen and farmers, and destabilized agricultural regions in the densely populated Southeast Asian region. The proposed dam would be situated at a sharp bend in the river, with a drop of approximately 6,500 feet. To complete this project, 4 to 6 tunnels, each about 12 miles long, would need to be drilled through solid mountainous rock. The plan aims to divert half the water's flow, over 70,000 cubic feet per second, to achieve the desired power output. Such a massive disruption, a seismically active and fragile mountainous area, is unprecedented, posing severe risks to local infrastructure, downstream valleys, and their residents. The Wall Street Journal pointed out that the mega dam is located near the disputed border between China and India. If the CCP insists on proceeding with this project, it will likely escalate tensions between the two nations and anger other South Asian countries. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited India in early January to discuss the impact of China's dams with Indian officials. Ahead of the visit, a senior official stated that the CCP's dams have already had devastating environmental impacts on many parts of the Indo-Pacific, including the Mekong River. Beyond its social and environmental consequences, the Wall Street Journal also highlighted the CCP's leadership's broader ambitions behind the Yarlung-Tsangpo Dam, revealing their disregard for the well-being of China's people. First, the leadership seeks to establish Communist China as the Middle Kingdom, asserting its dominance and sovereignty over global resources. This prioritization of China's economic needs over fair resource sharing with neighboring countries disregards the well-being of Chinese citizens, neighboring populations, and the environment. Second, the project's immense infrastructure costs, estimated at 1.37 billion yuan, 3 times the cost of the Three Gorges Dam, reflects the leadership's reliance on infrastructure projects as the primary driver of economic growth. However, such investments come at the expense of other critical areas. An economy burdened by debt is prioritizing this unnecessary vanity project over funding for education, pensions, healthcare, and other essential social services. Although Xi Jinping has touted the environmental benefits of the new project, the potential negative effects far outweigh its purported advantages. These include heightened seismic risks, water disputes with other countries, humanitarian concerns, and China's continued over-reliance on heavy industry to drive economic development. These issues collectively expose the broader costs of pursuing such an ambitious and contentious project.